Hello everyone and welcome to the Innovation Showcase Theater. My name's Toby and I have the pleasure of being your host today. Now we all know that to thrive in the new world of digital business, companies have to innovate at an unprecedented rate. So we're bringing you 11 sessions here at the Innovation Showcase where we will share with you the latest solutions, service innovations, and best practices which we know will inspire, inform, and engage you here at Cisco Live 2019. Now today we'll be exploring the Internet of Things, and to tell us about it, I'm happy to introduce to you Cisco's Liz Centoni. But before we hear from Liz, we hope that you enjoy this short video.
The electricity is always there. We don't worry about it. We don't think about it. Never do we think about an attack on the power grid. It is like this all over the world. It is like this in Finland. Turku Energia supplies electricity for hundreds of thousands of people. Because its operations network was independent from IT, an attack could have found its way into the grid and no one would have known, until it was too late. By extending the IT network out to operations, Cisco was able to help secure the entire system, both now and in the future. And with Cisco IoT technology, the new virtually fail-proof system is as reliable as it is secure, one unified network. It's why tonight, in Turku, life will go on like it always has and always will.
Between on and always on, there's a bridge. Cisco, the bridge to possible.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So let me give you a brief overview of what you're going to see in these next 40 minutes or so. So I'm going to cover a few highlights on IoT. We have our customer, Dr. Jürgen Tusch from Energy, who's going to talk a little bit more in terms of what are the challenges and constraints that he sees in the utility space. And this is more often than not, you can expand into other industries as well. Then we're going to hand it off to Vikas and Albert, who are actually going to show you more than I did on main stage, because it's a limited time on main stage, on innovations that we're actually bringing to our IoT portfolio. And then Vikas is going to hand it over to Susie, who's going to give you some examples, like real examples, because we want to show you things that are not just marketing, it's not just on PowerPoint. These are real things that we're actually releasing that you can use today. All right? So here we go. So I know I talked about this earlier as well. For us, we've been in the IoT business for a long time. And it really is about enabling a customer's use case, right? We've been working with over 50,000 customers to deploy our entire portfolio of IoT to solve those real problems. Whether it's around increasing top line, whether it's around getting close to customers, whether it's around improving operations, improving processes, making things more efficient, bringing more yield, bringing security all the way down, for example, to the plant floor. So when you think about this in terms of, when everybody talks about the Internet of Things, it's like, I know I touched on this on main stage about, most often than not, it's really not, every one of us hears about autonomous cars. But what car companies want to do at the end of the day is they sell us a car. They want to sell more things to us after that, right? So how do you use IoT to really understand what customers want and be able to sell you and me more things after that car that we've already purchased? More and more we're working with plants. Whether it's manufacturing cars, whether it's manufacturing cookies, everyone wants to know, how do I keep my production going 24/7? Security is a top of mind topic. So how do I do things like zones with things like network segmentation? These are active topics we're having every single day with our customers. And our deployment of 50,000 customers goes across all of these verticals, right? Whether you're in retail, healthcare, finance, whether you're in energy, oil and gas. our entire portfolio of investments that we've made actually help customers day in and day out with real problems across all of these industries, across multiple use cases. Even if a customer wants to start with a single use case, or a customer wants to start a multi-phase project with multiple use cases. We work with a whole ecosystem of partners to be able to do that, because in the IoT space, no person can actually do this no single company can actually do this by themselves. So there are top 3 challenges that customers talk to us all the time. Let me start with complexity. So the picture that actually you're seeing up there, that's the Port of Rotterdam. And by the way, if you haven't seen it yet, number 42, that is a tanker from the Port of Rotterdam. It's the red one right out there. We've been working with the Port of Rotterdam for quite some time. And I know you saw some of it in the video today. This is a 14th century port. And the aspiration of that port is to get to an autonomous port by 2030. So think about the complexity of connecting things in here. You have stuff that's been sitting there for a long time, probably from the 14th century as well. And then you've added new IP-connected devices as well, right? And we're looking at to be able to allow the port to connect this infrastructure, get more efficient as bringing those vessels in, moving them out, loading, unloading. That complexity is pretty significant. The next one is around scalability. In most environments in the enterprise, what are you managing? Probably 100 devices, 200 devices, 500. In the utility space, as we were working with Jürgen on this, we're talking about 60,000 substations that you may have a plan in the future to automate. So the scale of which we're talking about is 10x, 20x, what even we are used to actually seeing, because we focus more on use cases that sit inside the office space versus use cases that sit outside of the office space. The number one thing that comes up as the barrier to IoT deployments is security. CISOs, or chief security officers, actually cite that they feel like the biggest challenge of scaling from a proof of concept to a full deployment is in IoT. In IoT is security. Interesting kind of note, or data point. Only 25% of you actually feel that you know with confidence about the devices that are actually connected to an IT network. I want to let that sink for a little bit, because when we talk about connecting all these things, we've just expanded the threat surface. If the majority of it is you don't know what is actually connected to your IT network, how do you do things like device profiling? If you can't do things like device profiling, you can get to things like multi-layer segmentation. And actually later on, Vikas and Albert are going to talk about that as well, so do stick around for that. So before I go into a little bit of details on the rest of the portfolio, I want to invite up Dr. Jürgen Tusch, because we'd love to have a conversation around what are the challenges and constraints that happens in the utility space. So Jürgen, good to see you again. So I have to tell you that I've been to multiple data centers in my life, right? Pretty cool. I love going into this space. As much as I came from software, love the feel of hardware. I've never been into a substation. Actually, anyone here been in a substation before? Oh yeah, so you have a few people. I can tell you have never been in a substation. What is in a substation? Like we had all these pictures. I'm looking at these and, okay, I couldn't tell if you asked me to describe them.
Yeah, first of all, Liz, thanks for having me here today, and we can change this. So we will bring you into a substation, I promise. Yeah, well, substations, when we look at our environment, our assets, a substation is only the connecting elements in our energy system. So we've got overhead lines all over the country, and the substations connect these. And in the substations, we obviously have transformers, big transformers, which create a lot of electromagnetic field, which is not good for some equipment. So this is one requirement. And when you look into the control room of a substation, I would say it looks much like a small data center. So not so many 19-inch cabinets as in a data center, but there are several of them. So there are some similarities.
So is that what a control room is like that third picture?
No, we don't have it on this picture here, because this is a secondary substation. It's a very small one which you have in your neighborhood.
Okay. So when you think about this, right, I know you've educated our teams for the last 2.5 years after working. What are some of the main challenges that you see in your environment?
Yeah. Well, in Germany, we have this big endeavor called Energiewende, or energy transition. That means getting the CO2, the carbon footprint, out of the energy system, so make it basically carbon-free. We do this by replacing traditional power plants with renewables, predominantly wind and solar. And coming to solar, the good thing is everybody of you can participate. The only thing you have to do, put a solar panel on top of the roof of your house, and you are already producing energy on part of the system. Who of you has got a panel on the roof of the house? One or some? Some. So there's room for more.
You have more customers.
There's room for more. Though the challenge comes right away, because the renewables, they have a fluctuating generating profile. So it's a lot of power flow dynamics in the grid. And in order to keep stability in the energy system, we have to keep the balance between generation and consumption. So we have to control the renewables in a way that they really, that we can keep the balance and the security of supply. And that's what we do with IoT technology, applying IoT technology to control the renewables.
So you said like your control center is almost like a data center, right? When I walk into a data center, it's big. But if you look at the compactness of the equipment that we showed, it's pretty tiny. So obviously there's a whole bunch of constraints that are different from a data center.
Absolutely. So typically we have got our telecommunication equipment in control cabinets. And there is limited space. So the dimensions of the kit is important. And so we are very happy that the IR systems have this compact space with a DIN rail mountain and these kind of things. And also, there may be environmental conditions with humidity, with electromagnetic interference capability. So this is also a very, very important aspect, to have ruggedized equipment, because we said we need the kit to keep the renewables under control, to keep the stability in the energy grid. And so this is a very important message, and it's critical infrastructure, so to say.
So let's see, so power budget, space budget. On top of that, you want the modularity. So there's a whole bunch of constraints that you kind of work with in your environment. Now, you run kind of the digital transformation initiatives, right? There's a whole bunch of IT practitioners in this audience. And most often than not, when I talk to customers, you have the operation folks on one side, and you have IT on the other side. Now, a few companies are able to kind of work together, but in most companies, it's almost like there's an invisible wall in that. What would be your guidance for this audience in terms of, as they go and talk to their operational friends, right, in the line of business? What's your guidance to this audience on how to go out and enable kind of what you're doing in their own companies?
Yeah, that's a good question. And actually, there's a lot you can do from the IT domain, because typically the technology in IT is probably a decade ahead in what we use in OT. You were the first to use IP protocols. We are now using IP protocols in OT. And my advice would be, there are a lot of good concepts in IT which we can transfer to the OT world. That's what we do. And that can be your mission, really, to bring value to the OT people with the knowledge you've got from the IT regarding technology solutions, but also processes and operational processes to keep the whole thing running.
Great. So I know every company is different. The culture of every company is different as well. So, you definitely have the tools, IP knowledge, the security knowledge that you can bring over to your operational counterparts. Jürgen, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate you joining me again. All right, let's give him a hand. So in addition to what Jürgen talked about and what we're working with Energy, I wanted to touch on a couple of 3 examples on where are we enabling customers to deliver kind of those end business outcomes. We work with a number of oil and gas companies. ExxonMobil is one example of that. The number one use case that comes when you talk to a company in oil and gas is worker safety. And here's a good example as we go through the portfolio and we talk about data that you gather. This is where you have to have an infrastructure that's edge compute ready. So say there's a gas leak. You don't want to actually move that data all the way to your on-premises data center or a cloud and then come back and say, hey, let's evacuate people in zone 3. But you want to be able to have an edge compute infrastructure that helps you make decisions to be able to evacuate people at that time. Right? So the number one thing, again, when we talk with customers is how do you enable me to do that employee safety? Another example of that is where in Switzerland, in the city of St. Gallen, we're actually working with Swisscom, who provides a managed service to the city of St. Gallen. The city has a very small IT organization, so actually Swisscom provides this as a managed service. The idea here is to be able to connect every single police vehicle in the city. And we do that today with our industrial portfolio and working with Swisscom. So a police officer can either be in the police station, actually be in a police car, do their work like they never left the police station. But on the other side, it actually also helps the operations dispatch team because we provide things like GPS tracking, geofencing. So say if a police car is outside of the city of St. Gallen, quickly you can call them up and saying, hey, you're outside the city limits, need any help? Or maybe you need to get back to work. There's a couple of things that are happening over here. So there's a number of examples in terms of what we do with FANUC, where we've been working with FANUC in terms of predictive maintenance. They wanted to eliminate downtime. And working with them as part of their zero downtime solution, just in the automotive industry, they were able to save in excess of $200 million. So we're not talking about tiny amount in terms of what you can get to the bottom line. These are some pretty good, pretty significant savings to the bottom line. So where are the areas that we make our investment in? So this is a pretty standard stack. It's not something that we came up with. So you have your analytics and your applications at the top that want to be able to tie to your sensors and devices that are at the bottom of your stack. Cisco plays in the highlighted, kind of the dark blue areas around secure connectivity, providing that edge computing infrastructure where we now have a software platform in terms of where you can actually deploy your applications, whether you're building it, third-party ISVs are building it. The third one is around the data control and exchange. Increasingly, we're having the conversations with you guys in terms of what data to collect, what should I be able to use to be able to compute it at the edge? Should I take it to my on-premises data center? Should I move it to the cloud? This is, I would say, is still in a nascent stage. We continue to have this conversation as many of you are getting a lot more savvy about the fact that you want to have control over your information. Say you have a robot maker in your manufacturing floor. You want them to be able to see only the data that's required to keep that robot running 24/7. You don't want them to know what else is happening in your operations because that is your own competitive differentiation. So I would say this is an area, watch for it. We'll continue to evolve, working with you as you decide what data, where do I want, what kind of business insights that you want. The fourth part is around IoT security, which we do across the entire stack, right from the connectivity layer all the way to the applications. So you'll see Vikas come up in a bit, and he'll talk about what we build here in terms of our market-leading portfolio on industrial networking. These are purpose-built routers, switches, wireless APs, firewalls that cover a breadth of connection as well as communication protocols. And we have the management and automation as well. Right now, all our portfolio is edge-enabled. Susie will talk a little bit more in terms of how we're helping gather some of that information, make sure it gets to the applications that are developed in your organization or ISVs as well. 2 years ago, we bought Jasper. It's a great platform for cellular connectivity. When we bought it, it had about 25 million connected devices on there, about 25 million cellular devices. Today, we have in excess of 110 million cellular devices connected onto that platform. About a third of those are actually sophisticated devices. We're talking about connected cars. So in excess of 30 million connected car devices sit on the Jasper or on a control center platform. We actually process almost, I would say, about 25 billion API events every single month. We have about 50 service providers as customers, and it's gone out to like 20,000 end customers. And the last part of the portfolio is around IoT security. So without much ado, let me actually hand it over to Vikas and to talk about what we're doing in terms of IoT innovations.
Thanks, Liz.
All right.
Super excited to be here. Wow, it's a packed space, huh, with all the people in the room and outside. So let's get started. I think you've heard quite a bit about where we are, but you are primarily an IT audience. So let me kind of talk about when we work with our customers. Many of you start out in the data center. Many of you start out by deploying in the branch office environment. But we know your businesses and your environments are a lot more than just those spaces. So we're going to talk a little bit about how when you get outside to a parking lot, how you get to a kiosk, how do you get to a distribution center. IoT technologies are super important because you need to be able to connect assets in these environments. Beyond that, you have areas like Dr. Tush just talked about, a cabinet on the side of a street. It could be a transportation system. It could be a utility system. It could be a kiosk. It could be a first responder, like in St. Gallen example. Beyond that, now you have the field area in an oil and gas field, in a utility environment, in a manufacturing environment. So what you really need to think about when we think about IoT is this extended enterprise, all the way from the campus in a branch office environment to the field area environment. And there is a connected tissue, there's an IP, and there's a network that runs across all of those things. So I know you've heard a lot about these new products. So at this point in time, I'm going to actually ask Albert to come up to the main stage and get ready to do a demo for us with these new set of technologies. Liz at the main stage talked about the 2 new products that we've just announced. So we've actually announced a Catalyst Industrial Ethernet industrial switches, and these products are built on the same technology as the Catalyst 9000. Same iOS XE, same software capabilities, same automation, same programmability and capabilities on the Catalyst IE 3000. I know the product managers are super excited in the front row here. And on the right-hand side, you have our Cisco Industrial Router 1100 series, which is also being used by customers like Dr. Tush for their connecting devices over a cellular network. Also leverages all of the technology in our ISR portfolio, including the pluggable module that Albert is going to talk to you about here in a second. So those are the 2 brand new product lines that we have announced today. And actually what's exciting about them, both of them are orderable and shipping now, right? So we've been shipping the IR 1100 since December, and the Petra is ready, IE 3000 is ready to ship here in the next couple weeks or so. So enough talking about it. Now let me turn it over to Albert. Albert, so we've been talking about flexibility. Can you talk a little bit to the audience about the IR 1100?
So let's talk about this. This is some of the innovation that we're bringing into the routing technology. Is that everything is getting smaller, and it's certainly happening with the routers, and we're going to get it with the switches as well. So this is from a flexibility perspective, this little router has a lot of connectivity. It's got Ethernet, it's got serial, it's got fiber. But one of the most flexible things we have is now this is actually your 4G LTE connection. So, and it's pluggable, so it just slides right in. So earlier, Dr. Tush was talking about they wanted to have an additional sort of private LTE. Well, you can use the same system, it's just a different module to come. And I also hear there's another technology, 5G, coming around. So if I've invested in the IR 1100 and now I want to transition from 4G to 5G, I'm just going to slip this one out and slip the next one in, and I've upgraded, right?
Come on, the engineering team, that's all you got to do, right? We'll be ready to go with that.
Just slip it in and slip it out. It's like PowerPoint. Awesome. It's easy. I can do anything in PowerPoint. But additionally, so if I actually want to have multiple LTE connections, for instance. So I can get an expansion module and stick it on there. So now I am not bound to, say, one service provider. So I can have one LTE connection for one service provider and a backup for another service provider. So providing a lot of flexibility in this respect.
And so in this case, this is field replaceable, right? So you can start out with a base chassis and you can add on with some easy connection capability in the field, yeah?
So if the customer is trying to deploy these things out in the field, if they just need one, that's fine. If they want to have an expansion module, they can do that. But it's a protection, an investment protection, in that they can just purchase this system and then deploy it widely, and then however they need to use it, they can use it. So the other nice things about this is really low power. I mean, besides the fact that it's fanless and small, it's really low power, approximately 10 watts. So the innovation keeps happening, everywhere. And in terms of everybody wants less power, so we're bringing it here.
And this is an area when we've been working with our customers, they want to have battery backup that can last like 24 hours, 48 hours. So the power consumption makes a material difference in how long the battery power lasts. We're seeing a lot of solar-powered sites, and so if you're having a solar-powered site, the power you consume is really important, right? And go ahead. And I mean, I don't want to steal any of Susie's thunder, but supporting IOX. That's right. We'll be able to put applications on this as well out in the field for doing application development. So, and I think on that point, so it runs iOS XE, right? So all of the work that our customers are doing and kind of using the APIs and all of that automation is now extensible to this product as well. Correct. Okay. All right. So that's our. Want to hold it? It's small enough that I know I can hold it too. Okay, thanks, thanks, Albert. You can hold it. What's your? All right. So the next one that we have that we're talking about is the next. The new industrial switches that we have. Absolutely. So this is the 3300 product line. So this is a very small, it's an all gigabit switch, very small and compact. It also will do PoE, and it brings a lot of flexibility as well. So we also have modulars for this. So we have, besides the fact that you can get PoE or non-PoE, you can also expand the number of ports, so it's quite expandable. So you just slip it on like this, and I just went from 10 ports to 18 ports. Okay. So in this announcement, how many are we announcing? How many base chassis and expansion? So we have actually 5 different base systems and 9 different modules. Wow. So again, from an investment perspective, if I have a deployment where I just need 18 or fewer ports, I can get this module. But if I need to get up to 26 ports, right, we have a 16-port module. What all do you have back there, Albert? You keep pulling. So we just snap it in. So quite flexible as well. So also running iOS XE, really low power. We're getting a lot smaller. Fanless operation. So really important. And that's important when you deploy in warehouses or other environments where you have dust or other kind of things, that fanless design allows you to run it for years, right? So if you're in a situation where there's a lot of brake dust, this is your guy, right? No fans. Right? That's awesome. That's like, all right. So we're proud about our, and iOS XE, don't forget about those key points. Absolutely. And Susie's going to build on that here in a second as we come up. So great new products. We are super proud of them. Yep. But that's, let's talk a little bit more from an automation and how our customers can use the product as they go forward. So I think Liz talked about it on the main stage as Albert gets it ready. We support the products with DNA Center today, right? Yes. Both the products are supported in DNA Center. So I know what you're sharing with the audience. Maybe talk a little bit about that. Okay, so when we talk about some of the scale that we wanted to talk about and easing operations, so with DNA Center, we've got the new products already integrated in terms of a management capability. So we just want to show real quick that, I've got a DNA Center inventory page here. So you can see we've got 9300s already. We got a 2K, and there's our 3300. We've got a 4K, and then we've also got IR 1100. So DNA Center 1.2.8 already has support for management of these products. So we're working that in. And this comes with plug and play, software image management, topology, inventory, discovery. So from an operations perspective, DNA Center is covered, and we can scale it out in that respect. Right. And we talked about this at the keynote, like a single pane of glass, right? So if you're using ISRs or Catalyst 9Ks, now you can just add on these products into the same fabric of what they're doing in their environments. That's right? Correct. Right. Okay. Now maybe you can talk to us a little bit about security is a top of mind concern, Albert. All right. So maybe if we can take an example of a location and talk to the customer. Right. So here's we got a really small set of objects that are sitting here from an inventory perspective. And so the thing to look at is that we know what some of these device types are. There's a phone, there's a video surveillance camera, okay? But then some of them are unknown. So in this case, just get everybody's attention on the right-hand side. You can see it's a parking lot location. Right. So it's one of those safety locations that might be in a parking lot. So this would be an example where a network administrator had a project to provide
more safety and security in a parking lot. They're going to put cameras, they're going to put an emergency phone, and they're going to power it all up through PoE and a switch. So there's going to be a cabinet in a parking lot out there somewhere, right?
Okay.
Right.
And so in this case, what I see is you have an IP phone, you have a surveillance camera, and you got these couple unknown devices.
And I got a couple unknown devices, but they're part of the security solution, right?
Okay, all right.
They're doing something, right?
Okay.
But you're a network administrator, like, okay, I don't know what they are, but so what can you do to sort of secure yourself?
And I think we talked about this, Liz talked about it, that what we've heard is about 25% of the time is when you know about all of the devices on your network. So these temperature sensors, HVAC, badge reader, all of these assets exist on your network.
Right, exactly.
Maybe we can talk to customers about how, if they were building an SDA network on a campus, how could they interact with it?
Right, so now we're going to sort of flip over to SDA and talk a little about the security solution from an SDA perspective. So if I had an SDA, so one of the things I do is so we're at headquarters and we got our SDA fabric. So I've got a number of virtual networks that I'm creating. So inside of SDA, I don't want to go into it too deeply, but you can create these virtual networks. And for the most part, I have my campus users, my IP phones, my users, people on laptops, IP phones and the such, and they can go to both directions. Right?
That's right.
So we're showing both directions. They get to the internet, and they get to the local data center, and they're talking only amongst themselves, right? They're in a virtual network, and they're segmented that way. But we've got also this stuff, too. We've got building management. So you talk badge readers and HVAC systems, and we put them in their own virtual network, and they're blocked from the internet, right?
Right. There's no reason for your badge reader or your things to be talking to the internet device, right? And it creates a surface area and a threat for the company.
And there's no reason for my badge reader to be talking to people on the campus network either, right?
That's right. Okay.
So we segment them that way. I mean, then I've also got contractors and guests that are coming in, and there's no reason for them to get to my local data center. We segment them off, and off they go to the internet. Okay, but then we got everything else, right? So this we're going to get back to our parking lot example. So now we've got this box sitting out in a parking lot somewhere, and it's not badge controlled. So access to my network is really outside of any sort of normal security access that we have. If I have a crowbar, I can get in, right? So what do I do there? So with the security solution we have in SDA is you just create a virtual network for it, and you segmented it off completely, and now I can just keep that only going to my local data center. So bringing this back to those devices that we had that were just random MAC addresses is now I'm just going to trust that the security solution guys will know what they're doing, and I'm going to put them in their own virtual network, and they can only talk to the local data center. So if there's any security issue there, I mean, it's really mitigated to just that virtual network and just that physical security system, right?
And what we find, by the way, is in many of your environments, you have these unknown devices. You can't authenticate the device. There's no 802.1x supplicants. These devices aren't secure. But if these devices are able to talk to anybody else and they get compromised, this is how botnets start, right? This is kind of the compromise that happened with video surveillance cameras and things like a couple of years ago. Right, that kind of brought down the internet on the East Coast as an example.
Right. So we want to be able to say that if you're trying to deploy outside of your enterprise and you're using SDA, you can still do it securely using your own virtual network just for that, because that's outside of your security control. So you still want to support that and provide the connectivity without compromising on security for your normal business process.
That's right. So now I think this is an example of what we call intent-based networking, right? The marketing speak, and I know you have a better word for it. Go ahead, Albert.
Okay, I'd prefer policy, but policy, intent.
Yeah, so I think that in this case, the policy or the intent is that this virtual network can only go talk to the internal data center assets. They can't really go to the internet, right? And my PC can go do other things, or my guest network can do that. Okay, now, so can you help the audience? How would you execute this? What would you have to do to kind of run this policy in the network? So
this is an example of what it would look like from a policy configuration page from a network administrator. And you see on the left, I've got my virtual networks. And so now if I want to implement a policy that says devices that are unauthenticated are only going to go into the IoT virtual network, I would just go over to here, and I would find my no authenticated devices, which I've defined in ICE, and just drag them over and press save. And I've just implemented the policy that says devices that don't authenticate and for which I don't know are now associated with my IoT virtual network and are subject to all the routing and policy and security solutions that I've enabled for that virtual network.
That's right. So when we talk about security in these IoT environments, clearly we'll work with utility customers. We're working with smart cities. We're working with the more complex environments. But from an enterprise IT point of view, this is an easy way for them to control these things that are on their network that are known or maybe unknown in some cases, as an example.
Right, exactly. So just define, it's easy enough to define a policy, right? And segment them off.
Okay, that's awesome. Hey, thanks, Albert. So I think you kind of took us through the hardware, the new products that we have launched. We talked about DNA Center, support exists with these new products, and now we are also being able to implement security in a relatively straightforward way that like even I can understand, right? So it kind of gets us in a head start there.
You're welcome.
So, thank you, Albert.
Sure.
So before I bring Susie up, let me kind of summarize a little bit. So what you heard from me really is the blue part of the picture, which is you have this world-class edge computing infrastructure capabilities available today within our IE3000 series of products and our IR series of products. So the world-class iOS XE, great hardware, great software with capabilities, but that's just the half of the story, right? Now what we've been working on is kind of bringing together this edge compute infrastructure and applications on top of it. And to do that, we're kind of bringing the DevNet and our ISVs and our partners to come up and make that happen. So with that, let me ask Susie to come up and kind of take us to the next chapter.
Thank you.
There you are, Susie. Thanks.
Thank you. Great job. Excellent. So this is an amazing portfolio, and everything that you've seen here is really exciting for networking. It makes IoT edge networking real. Now, in addition, the part that I'm really excited about that is, in addition to driving intent-based networking to the IoT edge, this opens up an opportunity to drive developer innovation to the IoT edge. Because there's a software layer. There's a software layer that can host applications, and developers can now innovate in this space. Oops, sorry. So let's just think about edge computing and think about the edge computing applications. This is not a new word or a new term in the industry. It's been around forever. But it hasn't really become real, especially in these industrial areas. So if we take a look at these different verticals and say, why do we need edge computing in these areas? In manufacturing, we have really mission-critical operations that are going on all the time. You're processing data, you're moving real workloads. You have low latency, high performance requirements in these environments. So that's not a time that you want to take all of that data, send it up to the cloud to make a decision and come back. You need to make real-time decisions, and that's an opportunity for edge computing. If you take a look at the area of retail, in retail you have stores. So you just have geographically distributed physical locations. You might have customer and store data that's up in the data center or up in private and public clouds, but also within the store itself, you have point-of-sale devices, RFID readers, wireless systems that can tell you where customers are. That's an edge, and there's a lot of edge processing that we can do to innovate there in the store itself. If we take a look at utilities, as Dr. Tush just talked about, we have substations and we have areas where we're actually interfacing with brownfield equipment, with analog equipment and physical systems. And as those get digitized and we need to process and optimize what we're doing there, it's another opportunity for edge computing and applications at the edge. And let's think about transportation in cities. Here you have roadways, ports, things that are getting instrumented, but in addition you have police cars, ambulances, moving vehicles, trains, and these are very mobile and physically distributed infrastructures that can also benefit from edge computing. And what I'm excited about is thinking about all these industries and thinking about what can happen if you actually let applications come into this place and developers who are writing applications for these different utilities to come into these environments. So let's take a look at transportation in cities. And specifically, Liz had just talked about St. Gallen and what Swisscom has done for the police officers there. And I just want to dig in a little bit deeper. So if you think about that police officer, right? The police officer is in their police car. The police car is an edge environment. It's a car that's moving, it's mobile. It has one of these beautiful gateways in it, and these new ones are going to be in there next. And what happens is that's the police officer's office. So you have a dashboard camera, it has a Wi-Fi hotspot, there's a laptop computer that's in there, so it does a lot of processing. So that's each an edge device that has a gateway. And then if you think about all of the police cars that are moving around, those need to be kind of managed with a gateway manager. And in addition to the hardware, we have the software. So we have our gateway manager in Cisco Kinetic that can provide some cloud gateway management. And on each of the edge routers themselves, we have IOX, which means that they can actually host applications. And then if we dig in a little bit deeper, what happens is, let's think about what the gateway manager has to do. The gateway manager kind of has two duties. It can, first of all, have abilities to programmatically manage those devices. And you saw some great examples of that earlier that Albert showed. In addition to managing the devices, it also needs to now deploy applications and containers to the edge and manage the applications running with them. And so it has both of these capabilities in our gateway managers. And then on the device itself, they have the capabilities to actually host those applications. So they need application and container management as well. And just to quickly show you and give you a flavor of the APIs, so in the Kinetic Gateway Manager, then there's things like device management APIs so that you can integrate these into the workflows. So if you think that all of the police cars have a number of gateways, there might be somebody in charge of operating those. All of the buses or ambulances may have another owner for them. So you can actually put users into groups who can then claim gateways and manage those using these different APIs. So it lets you access that. And then for the application management side, you can do things like manage these applications, deploy the applications to the edge, start them, run them, close them when you need to. So this is the other part of what can come together. So this is really an exciting capability that really brings developers' innovation to the edge. Now really the key is then, how do we teach people to use all of these things? And together with Liz and Vikas and the team, what we are launching here is a new DevNet IoT Developer Center. It's at developer.cisco.com/IoT. And we've been creating there, enlisting the use cases and the capabilities, providing the developer documentation and the tooling so that anybody who wants to start building these solutions today can start doing them. So you can get in there now, whether you're on the IT or the OT side, whether you're a customer or you're a partner who deploys these, or an ISV writing apps, you can go here to get the resources that you need. And in there, what you'll find are learning labs. So we have DevNet IoT learning labs that will teach you about the different APIs, the different capabilities that you can get hands-on right away. And in addition, we have this a DevNet sandbox, which is, you might not have one of these yet in your home or in your work office, but if you want to start using the APIs and using the products, we actually have them in a DevNet sandbox in the cloud. You can make a reservation and actually start using these to get familiar. And it's really interesting because what we're finding is, you don't always have a network to play with in the utility industry or a police car and some of these edge environments, but you can actually use the DevNet sandbox to get folks trained up and familiar in using it, and then go ahead and deploy it when you're ready. And next, the last part that I would like to say is that we have something called DevNet Exchange. So when you come about and you're starting to build these solutions, then what you want to do is you want to have code that you can just use. So it's one of these things to get these things ready, and we have both DevNet Code Exchange, where you can get free source code that already has a system running and has some solutions built that you can then just modify. In addition, we have Ecosystem Exchange if you're ready for products, and what we have are our partners' products, and especially ISV products that can actually be used in your settings today. I'm showing 3 new IoT solutions that we've just brought into DevNet Exchange. We have SimCom, which is a solution for lighting. And so as you're getting into lighting, into streets and everything there, then they have an ISV that has applications that can work in these environments. We have Alianza, which is in the manufacturing industry. So as you're taking a look at these industrial devices and work that you need to do in manufacturing, this is a solution that you can actually buy today, working on top of these platforms. And in the utilities industry, we have Eximprod. And XMProd has a number of software solutions for virtual RTUs, and it's available here, and it can be used, again, on these environments. So this just shows that the new type of innovation that we can do involves both developers, the network innovation, and the application innovation that can come together. So we're very excited about this and working together with Liz and having these offerings. And now she's going to bring this together for us for the close.
Thanks, Susie.
Thank you, Liz.
All right. So as you saw, we have the portfolio, we have the validated designs, which we didn't really talk about as much, but think about it as blueprints to enable you to scale, the ability to enable your developers and ISVs, and we're also training our channel ecosystem partners because we want them to help you get your implementation successful. So here's our ask of you. Visit us in the world of solutions over there. All of this equipment actually sits over there right now. It's pretty cool. Meet our engineers. There's a large part of our engineering team here. Meet our engineers, executives, ask the questions. There's a number of breakout sessions, about 18 breakout sessions. I would highly encourage you to go there. And then definitely go to the DevNet zone and explore kind of what the new IoT Developer Center is all about. I want to thank you. Thank you for giving us the time to take you through this. Thank you, as always, for your business, and enjoy the rest of Cisco Live. Thank you.